Hi and welcome to another episode of What's It For? In this episode we are looking at the Bokeh blur node, which is a defocusing node for your images, and you use it to soften a background. But unlike the defocus node, this one gives you a little bit more artistic control in that we can define various regions using these inputs as to what is blurred and by how much. Now the Bokeh blur is found under the Add node, Filter, Bokeh blur. Before we start connecting things to this, I want to just talk about these inputs. And the first one is the variable size, which says a support variable blur per pixel when using an image size for input, or something, which basically means if you use an input of an image in this socket, you need to tick this box to allow it to do its thing. Max blur is the radius of the blur. It's like a clamp that allows it to only blur a certain amount of pixels. Extend bounds doesn't really do anything, it just puts a black border around your image for some reason. I haven't figured out any purpose for this at all, so we will ignore that. Image is where you put your image input, and Bokeh defines the shape of your camera aperture, and it takes the highlights of your image. So if you have, for example, lamps in your image, when it blurs those, it will blur those into the shape of your camera's aperture. The size is the size of the blur and the size of the shapes of the aperture. You'll see exactly what I mean later on. Bounding box is simply a mask input that you can put in to define a small region of your image to be displayed, which actually helps when you are setting up, as this node is pretty intensive when it comes to processing and it can take a while sometimes to do its thing. So let's get started, and we will Shift A first and add an input image. Open on the desktop. We'll bring in a nice image with lots of lights, and we'll connect that up to our viewer. Okay, we don't need all this guff around the side at the moment, so let's go full screen so we can see our picture a bit better. Now our image is simply some kind of bar, which is nicely highlighted. It's got lots of little lights on, lots of lights here, and we want to defocus it so we can put something in front, like another image, for example a portrait, but in this instance we're going to use the image of a car because that's what I have basically show you. So let's connect this to the image and we'll get started processing. Now that went pretty quick because all our settings are at the default, and as you can see the highlights in the image have being rendered out as a simple square on each of the highlights there. And as I said before, we can put an image in here to change the shape of those. Now normally you would use one that would correspond to a camera's aperture, which would be a polygonal shape such as a pentagram, octagon, hectagon, something like that. But because we're being creative, we don't have to use that. We can use a simple image and create any shape we want. So you could go into GIMP, stamp out a couple of monkey heads if you want, and to use that would be quite fun. But for this instance, I'm going to add another input image. For this instance, I have already prepared these two stars. Now, in preparing these images, you have to have your image white and your background as an alpha. It doesn't work if you have a black and white image. For some reason it needs the alpha in order for this to work. So if I put the image in, you will see the composite and nothing happens. But if I take the alpha channel instead and put that in, you can see now that suddenly we have all the little highlights have become stars, which is quite mad but also quite fun. And now we can increase the size of these by increasing the size of the size value. So if I make that 1.5, It's going to think about things, and now the whole picture is blurred a little bit more, and the size of the bokeh, the aperture highlights, have increased correspondingly. So if I put that up to 3, for example, the picture will blur out even more, and we will get much bigger stars. Like so. As you can see, it's taking its time the higher we go, because it has to think about things a bit harder there. But now if we use this bounding box, let's just move those out of the way a little bit, and Shift A, add, I think it's under map, yeah, we'll just add a box mask, and we'll plug that into the bounding box. Now you'll see only the image inside the box is being rendered, which is great for previewing your particular effect. So now I can change that down a bit if I want. Yep, that's a bit better, or I can change it up. Let's see how ridiculous that goes. And even that's taking its time. Okay, and as you can see, the size of 9.5 is far too much. You totally blurred everything out. You're not getting any of the benefits of the bokeh. So let's put that back down to, let's say, 2.5. There, that's lovely, and we can see what's going on now. Okay, and now we mentioned before that we can input an image into the size value in order to determine what's happening in the image. So let's do that. I don't actually have an image to put in, but I have prepared a texture. So if I delete that, because otherwise we won't be able to see what's happening with our image. Let it do its thing. Shift A, add input texture. This is a simple texture of a circle, and if we plug the value in to the size value, now we need to tick the variable size. Do that, and you can see nothing great appeared to happen because it uses a value of 1. So we need to add a math node, add inputs, convert, there we go, math node, and now we can change this value, put it to 3 maybe. You can see things are moving, but nothing's really happening. It's just increasing the size, and that's because we are using the value and we need to be using the color. Don't ask me why, it just, that's how it likes to work, and we need that to be on multiply. Sorry. So does the value work actually? Let's maybe I've been making a mistake. No, I was right to change it to the color. Good to know. Okay, add the color value into there. Now, as you can see in our texture, we have a white edge and a black center, and the effect is that the center of our image remains in nice focus, whereas the edges fade into like a vignette or defocused area, and that can be good for using as a vignette. You could use it to highlight a certain part of the picture that you wanted to draw attention to. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the bokeh blur, but let's show you in a little bit of this scene. So let's get rid of the texture, X, and multiply. So we've just got our size value back to normal, and if I scroll out a little bit, I have down here a couple of images. I have here an image of a motor vehicle, slightly large at the moment, that I downloaded from Hollywood Camera Works. It's just a truck on a green screen background, scale, then a keying node to take away the colour, and then an alpha over node to put it into the image. And if we drop the bokeh blur into the alpha over node, let it process through. Actually, I need to duplicate the scale node and scale the image to the right size to match. Let's let it composite through again. And there we have it. As you can see, we have our vehicle as the main focus of our image, and the background is nicely in there. It's not distracting. We have some nice artistic blur going on, and it's all looking really nice. If I was to mute this bokeh node and we just had the two images on top of each other, you could see that the background here is a bit distracting. There's a lot going on, a lot of lights, a lot of things, and with the highlights on the vehicle as well, it's a bit confusing. You can't really see what's going on. So put the bokeh back on, and it should take a second or two. And that's lovely. And we can see it. Our background is once again no longer distracting, and we can focus on the image in front of us. So there you go. Hopefully that will give you some good insight on how to do this effect and make use of the bokeh blur node for your own project. And in the next video we will be looking at the bokeh input node. So we will probably keep this image set up and just move straight into that on the next video. Okay, happy blending. See you next time.